Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking. I'm Deanna. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day. It is great to see you. Welcome back. I'm sorry I wasn't with you on Monday. I forgot two doctor's appointments in a row. Monday and Tuesday, both at 11:30. Isn't that such a wind up? One was for me, one was for Jocelyn. Whatever. Here we are, but did you see that I recorded a series of 3 videos? Sorry about the 3. Otherwise, it would have been very long. For all of these vintage patterns that I'm finding, I brought some of them to Cape Cod with me a couple of weeks ago, and a bunch of them, not to be sad and depressing, but a bunch of them sold. It's just easier to sell them in person, right? But now there's a ton up there. There's a ton up there in the 3 videos, and people are logging on. They first went to Patreon members for like at least a day. Over the weekend was the first installment, so that as a special gift to Patreon members who support the brand, thank you so much, eternally and forever. Thank you so much. But first went to Patreon members and then went public, according to the schedule that I'd kind of laid out. So that happened 3 times. And these videos went out where I'm showing different patterns, a lot of Pearl McGowan, Jane McGowan, George Wells, some really exceptional ones. And to be honest, they're ones that I was holding on to because I love them. I'm still holding on to a few. I'm probably holding on to 20 now of other people's patterns, right? In the hope that someday I get to do them, but I'm not holding on to 120. So, yeah, so for me, that's a big deal. Because it's about coming to terms with it. Also, our taste changes, doesn't it? I'm finding that too. My taste changes over time, and I start to kind of streamline. And it's not so much of a trend thing as like a crystallizing thing. It sounds so stupid, but it used to be that I loved, like years ago, I loved Victorian stuff. Everything Victorian, I loved it. If it was Victorian, I wanted it. And now it's kind of like, I like things with simpler lines more now. And maybe that's just, I don't know, that's just my taste changing over time. So I look at some stuff that I've been hoarding and I think, yeah, like I'm not like, it's not, I'm not compelled anymore. So it's good to go through stuff on a regular basis for you too, I'm sure, and to kind of call and weed stuff out, because otherwise you end up sitting on a mountain of supplies, and it's not good for the supplies, is it? Right? Because particularly with burlap and older supplies, it's better if it's not packaged in the same way. It's better if it's somewhere on someone's lap who's working on it and realizing it, right? Because these are things of beauty. They are just sitting there with potential, all folded up. I hope you found those videos. There's tons of people commenting. Make sure if you comment, I'm a hot mess today, sorry. Make sure if you comment that it's in the YouTube video so other people can see that you called that number, and look up to see if other, if the ones that you're choosing have already been called. Because otherwise I have to do that. And time is a huge, huge thing with me, as always. So I hope you've been catching those videos, and I hope that was a fun substitute to us having a show on Monday. But we're going to have a great show today. I'm going to say my hellos in just a minute. The other, what was it, a week ago? I think it was about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, I found that website called Blurb. It's kind of a print on demand, or maybe they've printed X amount of books. And they are on the pricey side, without a doubt. But nonetheless, that's where I got the Theodore Sizer book that I absolutely love. By the way, I was talking to Molly, Theodore Sizer's granddaughter, and she said that she is, I hope it's okay to say this, working on an article for Rug Cooking Magazine. So we're going to see more Sizer firsthand in the very near future. So that's exciting. But when I was on that website, I found some other books by hookers. I found 3 other books that I bought that were super charming. One of them, this is the cover behind me, A Happy Hooker, The Craft of Priscilla Buzzell. Has anybody heard of Priscilla Buzzell? I'm just wondering, because she was a busy lady for a long time. We're going to learn about her today, but honestly, it's a thin little book. I can't remember how much this one was. I don't think it was a lot. It's a thin book, but it is jam packed. It is every turn has 10, 12 rugs on it, right? So it's continuous. We're going to look at this together today. You are going to fall in love with Priscilla, and I haven't had time to go down the rabbit hole, but I'm dying to find out more about her. Again, I got this book off a website called Blurb, BLURB.com. So, yeah, they do have a few rug hooking books, including the Theodore Sizer. a Mount Desert book I'm going to be covering soon. I'm wondering if I have the other books here. No, they're on the table in the other room. And another book by another female maker, kind of like a tribute to all of the rugs she's done in her lifetime. Same story with Priscilla. But for just a minute, let me just tune in and say hello to everybody. And Robin, great to see you. Good morning. Beautiful day there in Wisconsin. Kirsten, happy Wednesday. Beautiful day. I'm sure in rainy Vermont. It's beautiful. You didn't say beautiful. I'm just superimposing that. It is a very rainy day. And the thing that is stressful about it being rainy for me is I'm not finished with my magpie stuff that's due on May 17th. I literally, right before the show, just pulled up the last plumes of smoke in one of the chimneys of the fairy houses. That's my big project. Can't believe how big I made that rug. It's really stupid. It was very stupid on my part. But it's a beautiful rug. I'm happy with it. It's going to be nice hanging it up on the wall, which I will. I'm going to have it mounted or mount it myself. Maybe I'll do a video. But it's a beautiful rug. It was just a time pig, and that is scary. So my plan for today was to get it outside because it has so much synthetic material, and it's been on my needlepoint frame, which is the long, skinny one with combs. It's been on that frame for a while, so it's all curled up because it's very dense as well. There's about, at this point, maybe 120 to 130 different fibers in it. All kinds of crazy yarns and things I bought. It's so pretty. You'll see it in Magpie as soon as the next Magpie comes out. This will be the Midsummer Magic issue. So my plan was to put it outside because we have a wooden table out there. I was going to pin it on the table with thumbtacks or upholstery tacks and take a photo of it straight down because I, number one, don't have the time to block it. And number two, there's so much synthetic in it. And there's so much metallic in it. So I don't necessarily want to hit the iron to it. So I was going to pin it out there, and it is like biblical type rain today. So it's not going to happen today, which is stressful. My second project is a crochet project with sock yarn that is three-dimensional. It's not socks, and it's not a typical crochet project. It's not a blanket. It's something different. So I'm getting that ready too, but just a little stressy here. And I really needed a good day today to be able to photograph everything. So just for those of you who I know are still finishing your pieces for this magpie, I just want you to know I'm not done with mine either, which doesn't mean like it's an indefinite moving timeline because Judy's got to kind of jigsaw everything. This is when she takes the project and runs with it. So I'm sending her things, but just so you know, I'm not done with mine either. And it's going to be a couple days before I am, realistically. So it's due. The stuff is due on the 17th. A couple days is the 17th. You know, Judy and I have been saying this is supposed to be for fun, right? This isn't for another nervous breakdown. So I'm going to remind myself of that and just think, okay, if it's raining, it's raining. What can I do? I'm not going to take a crappy picture of it on the kitchen table with an artificial light. You know, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait until I get a good photo because I have spent hours making this rug, and it's one of the free patterns in the book. Some of the other free patterns that I've put together, some of our buddies in the group who have been sort of making them behind the scenes. God, they're gorgeous. They're all coming in now. I'm starting to see finished stuff. All the free patterns that will be in this this issue. Oh my gosh, it's a lot of really pretty stuff. It's going to be a great issue. Wait till you see. The first one was great. This one is at least as great. I'm loving this. Linda, happy mid-May. Oh my gosh, it is, isn't it? Right in the middle from the Garden State. I love all those pictures. All those little emojis are so cheerful. Lisa, great. And by the way, for those of you, Linda, you reminded me without reminding me, and nor should you. I have to remember these things. But for those of you who are ordering patterns, just know as soon as I finish the show, that is my next thing. I brought home all of the ones that were first I've got them all bagged in subtotals, but then I was waiting to see what people said on the second. I've gotten through most of them and added them and created new bags for people who called rug patterns in the second video. Now the third video is out, so I haven't even looked at that yet. I need to check that today, and I will put together all of the patterns that you called according to the order that they were called in. I'll get those all done and bagged up. And that's my plan for this entire afternoon. And then I'll have to come back to Magpie tomorrow on the 16th because that's just the way that the time goes, isn't it? Holy mackerel. Lisa, great to see you in Jerusalem, Ohio. And Cheryl, great to see you. Woo! Finished cutting grass just in time for coffee time. Oh, so it's not raining on the Cape. That is good news. And the happy hooker overcast here. So I'm going to be headed, I keep forgetting to tell you all, I'm going to be headed to the Cape next Thursday. And this is our big vacation where I am like lost in space for over 2 weeks. So we'll talk about that as we get closer. I do plan to do some videos while I'm there. So I got to figure it out in my head. But first things first, I got to get through the Magpie stuff first. And then we'll figure out what our schedule will be while I'm away. Because I do still love getting together. And I have some great projects going. And I want to bring all of you into the next great project. So I got to think on that too. I'm going to think on that. Karen, great to see you. It looks like you had a great trip. It was, I almost said Nova Scotia. It wasn't Nova Scotia, was it? Where were you just now? I just saw your photos. I thought, man, you're having a good time. Let me know. I'm curious to hear about that. And I'd love to see some of your photos that we could share. Hey, you know what? Gallery night's coming up on Friday. So I have some people who have sent stuff in for gallery night. If you are going to send stuff in, please do. Karen, if you want to share your photos, because you had a big rug hooking trip just now, if you want to send in some photos from that, if anybody wants to send projects you're working on, projects you finished, it doesn't have to be stuff you finished, sketches that you're evolving, things you need help with, questions, inspiration, pictures, ideas, people, any of that stuff, send it in. That's all for gallery night, and that'll be this coming Friday. So that'll be the 17th also. Oh my God. So yeah, we'll be doing that this coming Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Linda H., great to see you in Massachusetts. Heidi, great to see you. I haven't seen you in a little while. Great to see you in Belgium. I think we are having a good day. I hope you're having a good day too. Kaz, good to see you. Good morning. Right, it is morning for you still, way over on the other side. And Crystal, great to see you. Your collection of vintage patterns, incredible. Thank you. That massive ruggery piece on monk's cloth, claimed quickly, was especially. They were all massive. All of those ruggery pieces were super, super big pieces. There, with the exception of one like welcome mat that was still oversized. Man, those are big rugs. Those were meant to be rugs, though, weren't they? There was like no question about it with the ruggery catalog. Like they were actually rugs. But yeah, they are gorgeous, gorgeous patterns. Really incredible. And of course, if people fall through with stuff, most people who were claiming patterns, I knew. But there's a few people I didn't know. And as with when we used to do the live online stuff, there's always a percentage of people who I can't reach and who I don't know who they are, which is not a problem. Obviously, it's great to have new people participating. But if I can't reach them or they don't follow through with like claiming it, then things become available again. So I'll let you know if things become available again as we go on. I'll always let you know first Patreon members and then here. These are like my first two stops when there's any kind of news or excitement. These are my first stops. Catherine, great to see you in sunny Pueblo West, Colorado. Pueblo West, Colorado. Oh, so you're not in California right now. You are in Colorado. I get it. Okay, that confused me for a second. Doesn't take much, does it? Jill, great to see you in Mount Vernon, Virginia. Great to see you. It was Nova Scotia, Karen. Okay. Yep. You had an amazing time and you learned so much. I'd be so anxious to hear more about it. That sounds like an amazing trip. You've been doing some incredible traveling lately. I'm so jealous. It looks like so much fun. Anyway, there's so much going on in rug hooking news, punch news right now. But I think for today, let's just lay low. Unless you have questions or comments about other stuff that we can talk about. There's so many things we can talk about right now. But at this moment, I'm set up to talk about Priscilla Buzzell. And I'm so curious to know if anybody has heard of Priscilla. So let's start by, I'm going to read you the intro to The Happy Hooker, The Craft of Priscilla Buzzell. And this was written by Jerry, and I'm guessing that's maybe the husband. Let's find out. On January of 2014. And it says, in May of 2013, Priscilla Buzzell celebrated her 90th birthday. Her hooking buddies took her out to lunch to celebrate, and on Tuesday, they all met as usual at the farm to hook with her. By some reckonings, Priscilla has been hooking rugs as well as chair seats, wall hangings, scenes, portraits, Christmas tree ornaments for at least 60 years. She learned the craft from her mother and in turn has taught hooking to others, including her daughters, granddaughters, and daughters-in-law. Jill, I'm going to answer that in just a second. I just saw a question pop up. The Buzzell farm on Shattuck Hill in Derby, Vermont is like a gallery of her craft. but many of these objects grace the homes of her children and grandchildren. As her birthday approached, one of her granddaughters, Courtney Buzzell, suggested that we accumulate photos of as many of these items as possible and put them into a book. This is very similar to the Theodore Sizer story, isn't it? Wanting to kind of shore up that family history with a sort of mind to the idea that it is family history, but it's also rug hooking history, and it's important to so many of us who are outside of the family, on the periphery, looking in and going, "Oh, I would also like to know about that." This my life crosses with this, and I would like to know about this too. I'm so happy that more and more people are putting these books together. Um, Possible and put them into a book. The family went into action, and by the end of the summer, we had 214 photos, which we burned on a CD and exhibited at a showing of the craft of hooking at the Goodrich Library in Newport, Vermont. Again, this is 2014. Accumulating the photos and burning a CD were quickly done. Assembling them into a book was another matter altogether. A slow job, but finally it was done. And that was written by Jerry in 2014. So the photographs were taken by family members who possess or have access to hooked rugs made by Priscilla Buzzell. In most cases, Gerald Buzzell edited and enhanced the photos before assembling them in this volume. So right supply and all of that stuff. The impetus for this book was a suggestion by Courtney. Okay. I'm just reading the important parts here. The book was organized primarily to display the rugs, wall hangings, chair seats, etc., etc., etc. The contents are arranged roughly according to where they were situated in the summer of 2013. First are those which remain with Priscilla at the farm, Shattuck Hill Farm in Derby, Vermont. Then those possessed by the siblings, Priscilla's children, and then the cousins, Priscilla's grandchildren, and Uncle Don, Priscilla's brother. Finally, an assortment of Christmas tree ornaments hooked by Priscilla and given as Christmas gifts each year for more years than I can remember. How much fun is this? Oh, I can already feel myself getting like, because again, like another great family project. And then there's a list of the siblings and then the cousins. So the chapters, instead of going chronologically, in other words, go by who has the rug or who had the rugs in 2014. So it's organized that way. So for example, the first section of rugs is the farm. And so this would have still been with Priscilla in 2014 when she had turned 90. So the first page is like this, and we're going to look at some of these close up. But it's going to go to entice you, because this is a fun book to have arrive in the mail, I'll tell you. We're going to look at some of the imagery together, but it's lots. This is a hook rug too, if you're wondering. That's not a photograph. She was a teacher, right? I'm assuming she was a Pearl McGowan teacher, although there's other schools of certification. Most likely was a Pearl McGowan teacher. And you're going to see from the examples that we look at, all of these were at the farm. You're going to see from the examples that we look at, still the farm, that she worked in every style. She was a big realism person. She was a big her own compositions person, and she creates a style of composition with a pictured border, with stories in the border, that I'm going to start referring to all the time as the Buzzell border. I hope that we can adopt this language, because wait till you see what I mean. She so deserves to have a style of composition named after her. The Buzzell border. Wait till you see. You're going to say, okay, yep, I see. This is really special and different. All of these were at her farm. And again, we're going to be looking at these, some of them close up. She did a lot with realism. She did a lot with flowers. But more than that, she did a lot of personal family storytelling, and she did a lot of hit or miss. It's an Escher over here, right? There are some copyright things in here, because remember, copyright only lately, with the advent of the internet and people pulling each other's chains anonymously in social media groups, that has become more of a thing. But there is, like, Skeletor is in here, and so is SpongeBob. So be prepared for that, right? Because it is what it is. It was a little while back. So first, let me answer Jill's question. Then let's start looking at some of these images. Jill says, I have a question on how to do light coming out of windows. Oh, interesting. On a big rug. Big house with lots of windows. I'm doing an evening scene. Okay, that was my next question. So an evening scene, I'm going to assume that the the background is like, maybe it's going to be like a black sky or a navy sky, like a traditional color for an evening sky. And I'm guessing the light coming out of the house windows, you're mostly concerned with the handling of the window and around the window that the light would be coming out of. I would say, well, listen to everyone's opinion, but I would say to do something quite realistic with light coming out of a window, and you're dealing with around the window in the house, right? I would say take the colors, right? If you haven't hooked them yet, take the colors that you plan to be immediately around the window, right? Of all of the windows that will be lit in this evening scene, and I would marry the color of the house with the color of the light. So if it were me and I had like a, I don't know, like a brown house, with lit evening windows, I would be taking some of the yellow or whatever color I had coming out of the window, and I would be kind of tinting the color I was going to hook the house right outside the window to be the same, to include that color. Because if you think about it, the way that it would work in real life would be like the light is coming out, and it's really an optical illusion, isn't it? It's not making like a weird actual ray of light or a cone of light. It's our eye, the cones in our eye that are like looking at it that way. But you're seeing the light come out at an angle. So if you're seeing light come out of a window around that window, right? And if you want to be very realistic, you want to take into account if you've got, like, for example, the moon in play. You want to take that into account too, because then it's going to bring brightness down on the light coming out of the window. So in other words, let's handle this with some kind of thorough attempt here on my part. So for example, what I mean is, if we've got a house, I'm going to do an extreme close-up because I'm sure yours is way more artistic than this. But if we've got a house, I'm just going to put a few windows so we know. And for example, if there is a moon in play, and the windows are going to be backwards, Deanna. If the windows are going to be whatever color they are, right? Like, let's just as a placeholder say yellow or white. Then I would assume that there's an area around the window that is a little bit tinged with color from the window, if we're being super realistic. Now, if the moon is in play too, then we've got an added effect here, right? So you could either double up with the color of the moon hitting the house and then a little more light coming out of the windows, or you could choose one or the other. If you're hooking in a super primitive style, it's not a thing, but it sounds like you're concerned with the way the light looks coming out of the window. I wouldn't do anything that was really stylized and graphic for this, because I think it has potential to backfire. If you do a window and you're thinking, well, the light comes out like this because I'm looking at a photograph and it is coming out like that, I think that can become confusing in painting or in textile art, because it's an unexpected shape, right, or cut taken out of the house as a whole. So I would stay a little bit hazy right outside of the window. But if I have moonlight coming in, it might be that this side of the house, that this area here is more affected by moonlight than lamplight or interior light. So it's two different decisions to make. I assumed there was a moon, maybe there's no moon. And if that's the case, I would simply take this color, and I would, almost like what they did with my arm when they just cut a huge piece of it out, I would take X amount of space around the window, and I would marry the color of the light to whatever color you're hooking the house. That's what I would do. But I'd be curious to see what other people would do too, because I think it would give a very subtle effect. I think it would give a very soft, kind of hazy glow to it, without like a punch in the face graphic effect. There is a moon and stars. So again, that will become a question whether you want to hit one side of the house with the color of the moon is maybe more white than the color of the interior lights. I mean, that's changing too, right? Because now we have bulbs in every color. But if this is more white, I would think about catching the roof and the side of the house with a little bit of a lighter shade with the moon. So right, then you'd be working in reverse. I'd be using a lighter color, right, to do it, and then maybe dyeing darker, because you can't dye lighter. Although you can remove color. I'm totally going down a rabbit hole. You can remove color. If you've already got the color for the roof and the color for the house, and you're thinking, oh, I wish it was a little bit lighter so that it looks like the moon is hitting it, I want it just a little bit lighter, you can use Synthropol to take some color out of your wool. It will work. There are those old Cushing packets. I don't know if they're still produced. I have a bunch of ones I've got that I know are old. but they're color remover packets. But I will say, I think Synthropol works just as well if you soak material in Synthropol, whether it's cut or not, doesn't make any difference. If you soak stuff in Synthropol, it will lift the color a little bit. It might lift it just enough to be able to get it a couple shades lighter, so that you can do this part of the roof and this part of the house just a hair lighter. Interesting. I thought Synthropol set color. It does set color, but incredibly, it also removes color. So yeah, it will do either. You'd have to leave it in there for a while, but it does remove color as well. It does both. I know it doesn't make any sense at all, but when I've over dyed stuff, I've left it in Synthropol and it does take the color back out. So weird. But I also use those vintage packets that I have, and it could be in their Cushing. It could be that there are some products by, I don't know, but maybe like RIT, that kind of thing, that are color removers. You want to be careful about what like the removing agent is, that it's not, you don't want to use like bleach or something that like could like leave holes in your material. But there are lots of things that you can remove color with. So that's interesting. That's interesting too, because even if you're working in a primitive style, you could remove just a little color. It will make a visual difference, right? Because not everybody has 1,000 Shades of Grey. That's a reference to that book that I have never read, but very famous. That was 100 Shades of Grey, actually. I screwed that up. But, not everybody has every shade of every color. So it's interesting to know how to make things darker, how to marry colors, and how to remove a little bit of color. It's not going to be a life-changing amount, but it is going to be enough to show that this side of the house or this area around the window is a little bit lighter. So, and if anybody else has any other ideas, definitely let me know. And Jill, you said dark navy and purples for the sky. That sounds beautiful. I'm always curious to know how other people do stuff. I don't do a lot of technical fiddling, and I have to admit I do have every color because I do my own dyeing, and I have so much wool to begin with, that I typically can find or make the color I need pretty quickly. Um, but once in a while, I do something that involves some kind of chemical laboratory experiment, like science class, once in a blue moon. But I bet other people are more proficient, like with this area of dyeing. And if anyone else has a comment along those lines, I would love to hear it too, because I love to learn stuff too. So I'm gonna come here. I'm gonna keep my eye open in the thread, and I'm gonna come over here. And I didn't take a picture of this because I didn't see it, but you can see her hand moving on the piece she's working on. I'm just going to see if I can get it in focus. It's not a big deal, but it is kind of beautiful. Oh, I'm so sick of this stupid camera. There we go. It's also interesting always to see the way people hold their hooks, because I feel that we all hold our hooks a little bit differently. Looks like she's working on burlap too. And honestly, most of the patterns in this book, because of their age, they are on burlap. So let's look together and let's see what we can figure out. Um, I have to say this was going to be just a picture book for me, because I thought, oh, let me look at some pictures of rugs. I'd love to have lots to look at. I thought I was going to put it on the bedside table, and then that was going to be the end of this particular book. But I have to say, when I got it, my first reaction was, I looked through it like I just did with you, and I went, oh my gosh, look at all these rugs, right? Oh, wow. Um, and then I really started to look at her work. It's doing this focus thing again. Then I really started looking at her work, and I thought, wow, we are talking about someone who is not just a teacher, right? Who's not just teaching things the way that they're done, but she is actually an artist. Like, she's really an artist. And you'll see what I mean. Remember, these rugs are not um, they're not chronologically correct. They go according to whoever's house they were in. So, for example, I might just look at them with you, because there's no more text in the book. So in this particular page, this belonged to one of the family members, and in that one house resides this Escher, right? So very, very graphic Escher, very unusual in green and white. The fish sort of evolving or devolving into the bird, or vice versa, whatever, but classic Escher image. On the right, that is definitely a Garrett Bluenose pattern, this sort of mosaic checkerboard pattern. It's like a variation. It's a commercial stamped pattern that's a variation on a 1 inch pattern, right? That would be homemade, like the one I just bought and showed you last week. We're going to look at that one closer up because I have that one as a watercolored pattern. It's an old pattern. But the colors that Priscilla chose are completely different. And then down below, we've got a classic McGowan pattern, classic colors, right? Very sort of bedroom colors, that light vanilla ivory color, and then the uniform pink roses and the green, lots of fade, lots of color effects and shading, and then a very graphic snowflake. So you can see from one image to the next, she worked in so many different styles. She also was a big one for hooking part of the pattern and leaving the backing showing. So in this case, we're looking at burlap, obviously done. This is her initials in 92. I think this is a Rittermere pattern. I feel like I recognize this. I might be wrong, but if I had one guess, I would say Rittermere. So one of these sort of ethnic, this like 1970s, this was done in 92, but in the 70s, we got kind of inundated with ethnic style patterns that now everybody complains are culturally insensitive and what's the word? You know what I mean. I blocked the word out because it drives me crazy. But there was a real influx of patterns that were based on Aboriginal art, Native art, and this was one of them for sure. And I'm pretty sure I saw this in the Rittermere book, but you can see easily that she's got the background showing. And this is a real style, cultural appropriation. That's what I'm thinking of. We have a lot of patterns that one would now say, oh, cultural appropriation. Well, guess what? If people didn't show art like this, like birds broken down and patterns like this, I would never see them, right? Because I don't travel endlessly with all my vast amounts of money to all corners of the earth to see this stuff with my eyes and take nothing but photos or memories and leave footprints, right? I need to see pictures of stuff. Otherwise, I don't know what anything is. Okay, I'm not going to start. I'm not going to start. But this is one of those, and this is from that era. So this is certainly like a late 60s, 70s pattern. And I think it's beautifully done. I think it's super artistic and very, very different, that there's lots of instances where she leaves the background not hooked. Now, back to this Bluenose rug that we were talking about. I'm going to make it just a hair bigger. Hold on a second while I do some technical unlocking. Remember, these are photographs of photographs. So I just find this extraordinary because to Jill's earlier question about glow, there is so much glow happening in this rug, and you can see what's going on. This has got to be, I don't know if Priscilla did dyeing, but these could be like the door slash Cushing swatch sets, lots of them. But at least in the corners, you see that the color is fading pretty reliably from like, it goes 5 tones from like a off-white to a butterscotch color. And in the middle, the middle fill, which is a bit irregular because you notice there's bump outs north, south, east, and west. Just one row of bricks bumped out. Isn't that curious? It's just a great pattern. But you can see that there is some shading here, whether it's swatch sets or whatever. It gives a great glow when you go a hair, when you slide from one tone to the next within the same exact color. So if for example, that color is old gold, we have 5 sort of generations of old gold, right? And that is how you do shading in a nutshell. And that is also how you do tinting, right? So this is a great example of glow. It's really an unusual piece because we're looking at mostly primary colors, but it does read as extraordinarily colorful. And it doesn't read as, in my mind, gauche. Sometimes too many colors, it's just too much. There's very filigree outlining that makes it look like a mosaic, like tiny tiles. And there is a pattern that with this particular design, right? This is a Garrett Bluenose. With this particular design, there is a pattern in that, you know how when you do a quilt square, or for example, not to be disgusting, but if you ever are like using a bathroom in a restaurant and it has a tile floor, and sometimes your eyes look at the tile floor. Does this happen to you? And let me see if I'm in focus. Ha! And you see different shapes. Do you know what I mean? If you stare at something long enough, now you're envisioning me sitting on the toilet like indefinitely. But you know what I mean? When your eyes look at something and it's like, oh, I thought I saw. It's the same thing with music or cuckoo clocks. you think you hear tick tock, and then you hear tick tock. Do you know what I mean? It happens visually too. With these patterns, with this particular pattern, it's interesting because you see where the black lines are, where Priscilla has put in the black lines and the borders. But I have seen other versions, including the drawn and colored version of this pattern. And it, with the colors done differently, it is a completely different pattern. It looks completely different. You still have the trio of tipped squares in the center, but it looks completely different. Just like, you know, it also reminds me, if you're a quilter, of an around the world. Can you let Buttons out, please? I'm the only one who hears the dog barking. Isn't that remarkable? Because I think I think you can hear him barking, but the other person, I'm not going to start. I love him. So this reminds me of the style of quilt called Around the World, right? Where you have squares upon squares, stars upon stars, and it goes out, 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 and makes patterns as it goes. And if you've ever done an Around the World quilt, you know that it all hinges on color placement and contrast, darks versus lights. And it completely changes. You could do this 100 different ways, and you would think they were all different rugs. I think that's such a curious thing. Right alongside, right, we've got a sort of oriental rug on the right that she made, that Priscilla made, and on the top right, you're seeing a hit or miss. I'm going to leave a lot of these hit or miss rugs out of this presentation because we have our hit or miss class coming up, and I'll be talking about hit or miss a lot as we do different designing based on the history of hit or miss patterning. This is a great beginner class for people who haven't hooked ever, the hit or miss class I have out, because it comes with a kit with tons of noodles as well, like just random widths and colors, and a great pattern that gives a lot of different spaces to execute different styles of hit or miss. So I'll be talking more about hit or miss in that class. I hope you're signed up for that. And also I put out the Group of 7 Design Light class. Those two classes are coming up, so I hope you're signed up for those. But the larger example that I'm showing you here is like a variation on cat's paw, which is, this one's a little bit more symmetrical than a traditional cat's paw. You see what I mean? They're kind of all in line. Cat's paw is really more random and pattern driven. This is a little bit geometric, but still the same feel. And these are all hit or miss fills, right? She's got her pretty rust background. I like the colors that she's using. I have to say, there is a feel, there is a bit of a, you know, there is a bit of a, my heyday of hooking was the 1970s feel. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I typically don't like those colors. But Priscilla has a fantastic color sense. You see what I mean as we go along. I feel her rugs are so different, considering the time that she was hooking in, and the colors that she went to, and the styles that she went to are so diverse. It's amazing. But I think this orange one is great for anybody, anytime. I think hit or miss is great for anybody, anytime, because even if you've been hooking forever, you might not have clocked all of the different ways that you can do hit or miss fills. And it makes so much difference to your piece what you choose, right? I get the kind of abstract cabbage rose vibe. Definitely, Judy. That was definitely an abstract. You know, now that you say that, it reminds me also a little bit of Kay Fassett. You know how the textile designer Kay Fassett has done a lot with like cross sections that look like trees, like trunks of trees, rings, kind of things. Certainly this rust color is one of his big colors too. It reminds me a little bit of his patterning. These are just abstract, eternally copyright-free style designs, right? This might be a stamped pattern, and it probably is because she was a teacher. But it seems to me the amount of hit or miss that she did, it seems to me that what's happening is she is hooking X amount of rugs that are quite detailed and demand certain colors, and you know, the teaching Priscilla is putting everything together just so, and then she takes a break and uses up her noodles, because she's got, I would say, one hit or miss rug to every 2 rugs that are not hit or miss. So it seems to me like her style was that she was, you know, doing projects and then going, okay, I've got a lot of leftovers, let me deal with that right now. That is a very technical way to work, and it's also a very smart way to work. If you can stay on if you can keep yourself on some kind of a schedule, or give your order of rugs, right, whatever's on deck for your next project, if you can give that a shape and say, okay, as soon as I hit this many ounces or this many bags of noodles, I'm going to do a hit or miss project, and that's that. I think that's a really clever way to approach. Now, here's another fantastic page that shows at the bottom right typical mid-century, 20th century rug that we've seen, flowers and scrolls. It's great, but I'm making the point here. This is like a cornflower blue background. This is not a brown background, an ivory background, a rose pink back, I mean, or a black back. This is a cornflower blue background. This is very, very unusual. For me, the pattern is not a standout, but the color plan is a standout. And it becomes, in my mind, a much more interesting rug because the colors are very different. For me, this isn't a hugely interesting rug to look at because, like the song, I don't know, American Pie or Hotel California, I've heard them too many times and I'm kind of done. This is one of those patterns for me, but when I look at it with these colors, it's a game changer. And I think, oh, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. I don't think I like blue with yellow, but maybe I'm wrong about that because this is extraordinary. Now, the big image on the left that has her initials with 1981, I feel like we've seen this pattern recently. I'm trying to think of where. It must have been on this show because I know that we've seen the tree of life that's done with the birds, right? We've seen the birds in the tree before. I'm thinking it was a Pearl McGowan pattern, but it could be a Joan Moshimer pattern. It could be an heirloom pattern. I feel like we were recently talking about this exact pattern, and my stupid remark was, I don't remember that pattern having a swan in it, but here it is again with the swan. So we might be talking about two different patterns, or the first example of this rug that I've seen could have been done omitting the swan. Could have been done more like a Jacobean classic McGowan tree with just the birds in it. Also possible. This is a, I mean, this is a known pattern. I don't know the name of it off the top of my head. I'm sorry, but it is a known pattern, and it's an extraordinary one because all of these little junctures and branches on the tree are areas that you can populate with different birds, and this is the kind of thing you could customize very easily if you equate birds to, for example, states. Like each state has a bird, or people's favorite birds or whatever. You could really personalize a rug like this and make it something that is really just for your family or operates as a family tree. Great opportunities for storytelling here, and it's just a beautifully executed rug. Priscilla does a lot with hit or miss backgrounds, but it seems in this rug she did not. And that was a good call because look how busy the rug is. It really needs a breather. There's lots going on. There's lots of different, this is an impossible tree. There's a different kind of fruit and leaf or flower hanging off of every branch. So that in itself is pretty magical, a little bit Dr. Seuss, very fun. And then there's stuff going down on the bottom too with all of these golden yellows and greens, cattails, right? A little bit of water in this composition. It's a real mishmash. Not in a bad way, but it is a busy composition, and this composition definitely could not support a busy background. So this is just clever planning and being a teacher. Now, my favorite rug on this page, and I think the next slide is a close-up of it, is the top right. And this is where, in my mind, we start to see the Buzzell border. Now, what I love about her rugs so much is she does a ton with personal vignettes. This is obviously not a commercial pattern. She's got names, she's got years, she's got cursive, she's got her handwriting on the rug that's hooked, and she's got, in this case, a checkerboard composition that balances squares and circles, and she's got important vignettes that have something to do with the family, probably the place where the rug is. I think this is this is still in the farm chapter. So we've got the sort of angling and the hunting, the gun and the rod on the bottom right. We've got the tractor, the fish, the animal, the rural animals that you would see, the pheasants, the pet dog. And then we've got some glimpses of the interior. We've got the stove, the house itself, says the farm 1945 in the center, the grandfather clock, all of these special things that are part of the storytelling of the family. Just a beautiful, simple composition that becomes an absolute masterpiece when you jigsaw in all of these different motifs. I think it's extraordinary. And then the layer of text around the edge, right? This isn't exactly what I've come to immediately think of as the Buzzell border, because this border is mostly text, but this is definitely the kind of composition that I would associate with Priscilla and no one else. One of the interesting things about this composition, unlike some of the others in the book that are original compositions of hers, is that all of the motifs here have equal weight, right? They are all the same size. It's not like the farm is being featured more heavily. If it is, it's because it's in the center, but otherwise it really is the same size as everything else. So that's curious that you could do a sort of Hollywood Squares composition like this and end up with all of these motifs of equal storytelling importance and weight. It's also a rug that can be seen from different viewpoints, which makes me think it was meant to be a floor rug. It's in remarkably good condition, thank God, because I think it is a really important rug. This is an example of what has got to be a Pearl McGowan, Jane McGowan, that kind of thing composition, but again done in Priscilla colors. Priscilla takes a pattern and starts running with it. So in this case, this is again not the kind of composition that I go for. My taste likes. What I will say with this composition is she has done a magical thing, rooting both of these Jacobean trees or crewel trees, Crewel. She's done a remarkable job rooting them diagonally like in a playing card composition, and then using almost like agate or like layers at the bottom that color change to pink in the corner, right? Those two corners, northeast and southwest. Isn't that interesting? Instead of just having the hill under the little tree end at the corner, she's brought the color into the corner. It really does something magic to the rug. It gives a lot more interest to the rug. It, for me, isn't an incredibly interesting design, but color wise, it becomes, again, Priscilla's colors crazy. Very, very interesting. She's got a very subtle hit or miss fill in the background that's mostly burgundies, beautifully balanced with lots of different shade of blue because she goes dark to light, dark to light. It's really glowing. This is the teacher in her, right, that does this technical stuff so well. There's a lot of technical work on both of the trees too. Very unusual to see a background that is this color with a border in the blue, right? And then the corners in pink. Very, very unusual. I can't think of another maker who historically has gone for these really oddball, super bright colors and made it work this well. I think this is incredible. It's very different, right? Whether or not you like the pattern isn't the point. The way that she took the colors and changed the feel of the pattern, that's the point, right? If this had a black background and these were all pink motifs on a brown tree trunk, it would be like, oh, that's a nice rug. But with it looking like this, it really, I think, is eye-catching. It's very diverting, very different. It's a great inspiration piece. She must have been an extraordinary teacher because she's bringing her personal aesthetic, like, in a huge way to every project. It's not like she's hooking the way that you see other people hooking from this period and then saying, well, I'm just going to indulge myself and put a little bit of a bright color here or there. She's going full blast, putting her foot down on the gas in every project, doing the colors her way. And that is very, very different for presumably the time that she was teaching, which looks like it was 80s, 90s, right? You're not seeing a lot of these kinds of color palettes at that time. Another page that's interesting that I just want to do in sort of an overall look at before we look more closely at my favorite. I think you probably can pick out my favorite. I think my favorite rug of all time. So she's got a family rug. This could be Jerry on the top left with the same dog that I think we've seen before. I think we saw the dog, you know, in the Hollywood Squares with the circles and the squares. There was a profile of a dog. It looks like the same dog. So beautiful portrait, beautifully done. So much humor, character, and softness in the handling of maybe Jerry, but absolutely beautiful. Handsome man regardless, and handsome dog or pretty dog. It's hard to tell. Beautiful, beautiful piece, right? I'm not one for portraits either, but this one is really the fact that they're both looking at you, and this is obviously going to be a original composition. But you know, when characters in art, whether they're animals, people, whatever, are making eye contact, looking at you directly, it's sometimes confrontational. In this case, it's not. It's much more inviting. There's such softness, humor, good nature to the personality of the man and the dog that you look back and you want to smile back at them, right? It's so realistic. There's such a kind glow to this project. It's not, while it's super artistic, it's not like a high art rendering of a portrait. It's super friendly. He's casually wearing a t-shirt, right? The dog is on his lap. It's a very informal feel to the portrait. It's very unusual. Down below is a Joan Moshimer composition. I assume Joan Moshimer did so much with the schoolhouse, usually in 9 or 16 configuration, but this is a 6, so that happens too. Um, it could be a Joan Moshimer. It could be that someone else did a schoolhouse, but I know that Joan Moshimer did tons of schoolhouses, and this is a beautiful example of handling a schoolhouse as a hit or miss project, isn't it? Because you've got mismatched chimneys, different colors of roofs, some patterning on roofs, the background totally broken down into hit or miss. It's just, again, extraordinary because if you look at the main colors here, we've got neutrals. We've got the light oatmeal gray and then the darker gray. But then her outline color is again that rusty, rusty orange color. She liked this color. This is really interesting because it's not everybody's favorite color, but I love that she goes toward that rust, that orangey rust and the rusty brown color. It's a great neutral color, and I don't think that its praises are sung often enough. Down on the bottom right, another beautiful, typical McGowan composition with a fairly busy hit or miss, black and white. It reads as static, right? It's not confusing. In the background of this rug that has these extraordinary, very well articulated painterly flowers in the Pearl McGowan style. What I really want to look at is that rug on the top right. So let me see, that should be the next slide. And it's not. Hang on just a second. Okay, wait a minute. This is me fooling around. I thought I put them in an order. A little bit of a close-up of the schoolhouses, right? That's worth seeing. It looks like that one might have a little damage, which wouldn't be surprising if it was on the floor. Here it is. Let's look at this one first. So this is what, in my mind, I will now always think of as the Buzzell border, where she has got a picture in the middle, and around the edges, she's got all of her storytelling. And this is such a heartfelt rug for me. I am so in love with this rug. So Buzz and Priscilla. Okay, so maybe Jerry is the son. Buzz and or it could be anybody, right? I'm just speculating. Buzz and Priscilla, 40th anniversary, September 14, 1983. So they were married in 43. Wow. She's got a time on the clock that must mean something. It's 4 o'clock. So maybe it's just a reference to the number 4. She's got 2 flowers up there, so it might be that those flowers represent the 2 of them, or it might just be decorative. It might be her favorite flowers. Let's go around the border first. And she's got other family members in the border. She's got David on the right, and she's got Nancy, David, Davids. That could be a full name. She's got scissors, a rug hook. She's got some little tools around the right-hand border. On the left border, we have Jerry, Linda, Heather, Allen. We've got the skis. We've got Holly and Steve. We've got handguns, the Colts with the target practice. Ken, Karen, Kendra, Courtney. These are obviously all family members, beloved family members, and their favorite hobbies, the things that really distinguish, right? Their big passions in life. It is just a beautiful, beautiful frame. A little bit of hit or miss around the outer edge. Beautiful frame for telling lots of stories that revolve around this house, this place in the world. Down at the bottom, some more seasonal stuff. There's Brandy the dog, and I think we are seeing Brandy, and I think this might be Brandy again. And we're seeing baskets, right, for harvest or different holidays. We're seeing the pumpkin, the corn. I mean, there are so many references in here to people, to hobbies, to times of the year. And in the center, a really, really striking, primitive composition with probably Buzz on the tractor, maybe Buzz, a little bit of a lake view. It's a really, and I'm sure this wasn't on purpose, but it's a very Maud Lewis view, isn't it? Looking down at the sort of crook or the dip, the valley between 2 hills, looking out at a body of water surrounded by more hills. That is the ultimate view of Digby kind of composition. And I don't think Priscilla was thinking of that. I think that's what the land looks like around her house too. But it makes a beautiful composition. We're looking at the house, the cozy, obviously occupied house on the left with smoke coming out of it, super comfortable, warm, welcoming, occupied, right? And probably Buzz on the tractor on the right, right? You notice how with the hills, she's able to create stories on each hill. One hill is filled by Buzz, the other hill is filled by the house. Some of the hills in the background are filled with colorful hit or miss autumn trees. And then one of the hills is filled with like kind of plow lines, tracks. I think maybe tracks is the right word, but for farming, right? So, and then she's broken up the different hills and different colors that she's liked, and those, and even the sky is broken up into clouds and distant kind of that smoky purple color. There might be a little bit of fade on this rug, but all of those colors that are in that central story of the house, right? This center player is the house. This is where we live. This is our piece of the world, our little corner of the world. And then around the edges, here are our special people. Here are the things that we love, right? It's such a personal rug, but it's so visual. And there's so much storytelling here. The storytelling is very accessible too. It's not like the Theodore Sizer rugs. Not that one is bad and one is good, right? But with the Sizer rugs, you really needed them to be decoded to say, okay, I get what that means or what that's a reference to because it's written in the book. With these rugs, it's family members, it's years, it's pictures of things that we recognize what the picture is, what it means, what it symbolizes. It's just a beautiful, beautiful rug. Let's go backward a hair to the other one that I accidentally pulled up. This is another, I would say, Buzzell border. Do you see what I mean? She's got a central motif here. Linda Hogg, Jerry Buzzell, August. Okay, so Jerry maybe is the son. August 31st, 1968. Down at the bottom, Alan, maybe born on June 1st, 79, and Heather, August 20th, 77. And then, so that's the central motif, right? And that is like a little island. We see some grass, we see some loons or something. And then beautiful island with a reflection in the water, central image. And then around the edges, more information, more text embedded. There are two frames that are functioning here with text inside of them, so for storytelling purposes. But then we have got the four supporting stories that are like maybe family crests or some like heraldry symbolism. The house, right, with either the age of the house or the house number. Down on the bottom left, a second house. So maybe one is a cabin, one is a house. Maybe we're talking about two different families. It's hard to tell. It doesn't seem like that, but possibly maybe one is like a vacation place or a place in the woods. And then down at the bottom, that sort of little Easter bunny. So it seems like a reference to a child, like maybe a stuffed animal. Or maybe this rug was done at Easter. We don't know, but all of the symbolism reads loud and clear. And again, Priscilla's really teaching us. I wonder if this is something that she taught as a teacher. I would guess not. But I wonder if she ever taught about breaking down compositions in such a way that you could do your own family storytelling, right? Like she does in so many of her rugs. Let's look at a couple more, and then I'm going to pause. This is an example of one of the most unusual hit or miss patterns I have ever seen. This is definitely worthy of a look. This is just like a scatter, right? This is in quilting. This is called a scatter pattern. It's like you have all the letters of the alphabet, you throw them up in the air, and this is how they landed on the rug with a little assistance. And then you put a neutral background, and in this case, a light background. It's kind of a maybe like a bluey white, but really striking. And all of the letters are done in hit or miss. Now, what you normally see with this rug are the letters done solid and the background done in hit or miss. So this is really different. There's a huge variety of styles or font of the letters and numbers. And the size, the scale is very different too. It's not just uppercase, lowercase. There are some tiny letters here and some enormous letters here. It is so different. She has outlined, right, which is keeping the composition tight. She's outlined, even though it's on a light background, maybe she didn't have to, but it's going very well with that darker border, and you can see there's a little bit of hit or miss in the darker border as well. It is just a reminder. Did she realize how many inspiration ideas she was putting out there? I wonder, right? Did she realize that with a rug like this, she was telling and showing her students, listen, you don't even need to have a pattern. You can create a super visually interesting and exciting, colorful rug with an idea like this. You can do hit or miss, use up your noodles. You don't even need a color plan, right? But you can end up with a rug that's this exceptional, folky, pretty. I think this is an extraordinary rug. I see a lot of sampler stuff, right? You see a lot of sampler stuff in rug making and needlework. Sorry, that was my chair. But I haven't seen anything like this. And in some places, like the top right, there is a little bit more of a dense concentration things are touching a little bit, it's a little bit busier. And then when you get to the left-hand side, it's a lot less busy. I even like that about this rug. It's like there wasn't this crazy measured maniacal need to make everything personally spaced out OCD style, right? She's a very technical worker. We've seen that for sure. But yet she's able to put things together in a way that is very light-hearted and easygoing, very casual, right? So it's funny because she's both of these things. I think that's, oh, we're over the time already. I think that's really unusual. We did look at a lot of rugs. I want to look at some more. So maybe we'll come to that next week because we're going to do gallery night. There's a lot more I want to talk about together. I want to do gallery night on Friday. So we'll come back to Priscilla on Monday. And I will look forward to this so much because there's so much more to say. You know, it's so much work, right? It's how many rugs did they say at the beginning? Jerry said an extraordinary a number of rugs they got together for this book, 214. And when you look at them together, it's not all one style, is it? But they all have the same energy, right? It's very high keyed colors. But she's not doing all extreme realism. She's not doing all folky, primitive stuff. She's all over the place. And that's what makes this book so interesting to look at. Again, I found this book on a website called blurb.com. You can order it and they send it to you. I forgot how much it was, but I don't feel like this one was a ton of money. Um, yeah, the icon looks like that. If you can see, it says blurb. So if you Google it and you see that, it's the right website. It's like a little blue book. So we'll look at more of her stuff again. Some of it I kind of skim over because it's like that is probably something she was teaching and it is very much in line with what was taught at that time. But then you see other things and it's like, whoa, so different. Totally her own spin. All right, everybody. I'm gonna spend the rest of the afternoon getting your patterns ready from the pattern sale and getting my magpie stuff done. So I'm going to be doing both of those things. If you need me, I'm at ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com. And otherwise, be sending in all that gallery night stuff. So we have an exciting gallery night show this coming Friday, the 17th. And yep, be sending that stuff also to ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com. If you're looking forward to the next magpie, right, because hopefully in the next couple of days we're getting most everything in, most everything. And if you're having a particular problem, please let me know with timing. But the next magpie will be, the theme will be the country fair. So it's basically an autumn issue, right? We're looking at harvest, we're looking at Halloween, we're looking at animals, fair food, fair animals, rides, things like that, things that you would find at that country fair at the end of summer into autumn. So I think no matter where you live, you're familiar with that kind of idea, right, of the country fair. So that's what the next magpie is about. If you want to start brainstorming ideas or projects, an article you might want to do, just let me know so I know it's coming and I can write it down and expect it. No pressure. There's never any pressure. There's never on my part and Judy's part, never any pressure or disappointment or upset if things don't go according to plan. Worst case scenario, you're working on something, you don't get it done in time, we hold it for a future issue. That's not a bad scenario. Meanwhile, there's so many books that I'm working on that it might be that your piece goes into a book before it goes into Magpie. So there's never any, don't ever worry that Judy and I would be upset if you don't get something done in time. That neither of us are like that. We completely understand. So you can reach me at ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com. And otherwise, I will see you on Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for our gallery night. I will see you then. And